On a recent episode, I talked about a majority of the so-called experts picking Notre Dame to beat Miami. I've got to walk that back. This week, some prominent picks have come in favor of the Miami Hurricanes, and that scares me a little bit.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is just too big of a week not to have a double episode day. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and host of Postgame on the Miami Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this episode, we'll talk about a number of flip targets in recruiting who are going to be in attendance. Everybody wants to come to this game, understandably. Notre Dame at Miami is one of the biggest games of the weekend. One of Miami's flip targets, not someone who is ever going to be at this game, but a flip target for Miami has flipped, just not to Miami. We'll talk about that. For Sunday's matchup, I want to go over players who are going to be wearing orange this Sunday, who I believe must step up, that Miami doesn't win if they don't get big-time performances from these big-time players. And I also want to put the spotlight on some X-Factor guys as well. All right, let's take a look at the expert picks that are coming in. And first of all, whatever experts pick Miami, whichever ones pick Notre Dame, doesn't change the way I feel about this football game. You know, I do my own analysis. Of course, I'm much closer to the Miami side. I try to learn whatever I can about Notre Dame. I formulate my own opinions, but if I told you I wasn't curious as to what some of the most prominent college football analysts have to say about this game, I would be lying. And yeah, sometimes I like the idea that, you know, someone who knows ball and covers the game appreciates what Mario Cristobal is building and gives their pick in favor of the Hurricanes. But as I mentioned at the top, it also scares me just a little bit because being that I'm a lifelong Miami Hurricanes fan, it's in my DNA. It's in a lot of our DNA to enjoy being the underdog, right? Because is there a better feeling than, 99 out of 100 experts pick against you? Then you go out there this weekend and you smoke the Irish, and we save all the receipts and we get to throw out our social media posts, dragging all these media guys through the mud. I know we enjoy doing that, and we sometimes, it's probably a complex we should all seek therapy for, but we sometimes feel like Miami performs better when they're out of the spotlight. But some prominent picks have come in this week in favor of the Hurricanes. Someone who I really respect, Josh Pate, who was formerly at 24/7 Sports. He recently made the jump over to On3 Sports. I was genuinely surprised. I was watching Pate, he did like an 8.5-minute video preview on Notre Dame at Miami. I was expecting him to pick the Irish. Now, I know that in recent years, Pate has been historically pretty high on the U. I've seen him out at Miami practices before, so I know he comes down. I know he's seen the team. I'm assuming he's probably been out there at some point this training camp, but since last year and, losing 3 out of the final 4, and since Miami lost Cam Ward, I felt like during the offseason, Pate was a little bit down on Miami. For example, he put out his ACC championship game prediction. He doesn't have Miami in it. He's got Clemson taking on Georgia Tech. So I just kind of assumed that Pate was going to go the Fighting Irish route in this game, but he picked Miami to win, and he strongly hinted that the intel that he's gotten, and I know he knows people in South Florida, that the intel he's gotten from Miami training camp has blown him away. Something we've talked about a lot here on Locked On Canes. Carson Beck exceeding expectations in the building. That's a big part of it. He also, and it was comforting to hear him say this, he said about Miami's defensive backfield, quote, not only did Miami overhaul the secondary, but they believe that could be the strength of the team, he says. And the edge that Pate gives Miami, I think the main reason why he thinks the Hurricanes are going to pull it out, probably when he did. I don't think he gave a score prediction, but he does seem to think it's going to be a close game. I agree. I gave my prediction earlier today on the crossover episode with Locked On Irish, but he says he thinks Miami's offensive line is going to get the better of the interior of Notre Dame's defensive line. That could be the key matchup and the vulnerability for Notre Dame. He likes the way Miami's offensive line matches up with the Irish defensive line. And he specifically shouted out Mark Fletcher as someone who could have a player of the game type performance. And, he thinks Miami's going to be able to run the ball, and that's going to be a difference. I also think Miami's going to be able to run the ball. We'll get back to my prediction in a little bit. But then, so I was a little bit surprised that Pate picked Miami, only because I thought he was a little down on the Canes since last year. Apparently he's not. I'll tell you an expert prediction that really surprised me was from, former longtime college football head coach turned analyst, Rick Neuheisel. He picked the Canes on CBS Sports to pull it off against Notre Dame. Now, the reason why the Neuheisel pick surprised me so much, those of you who have been Miami fans for 25 plus years, you remember 2001, the beating that Miami put on Neuheisel's Washington Huskies, 65-7 at the old Orange Bowl Stadium. And Neuheisel, he seems like he's hated Miami for the past 24 years because Miami, you could say based on that, scoreboard that Miami ran up the score, but it was Miami's second, third stringers that were in there putting up points with no resistance whatsoever. They won the game 65-7. I felt Neuheisel has had a blood feud with Miami for the past 24 years, but even Neuheisel picks Miami to win this game, and his primary logic is he trusts Carson Beck. He thinks Carson Beck is going to be a big difference in this football game, and obviously you compare Miami's quarterback situation to Notre Dame's. Notre Dame's, to put it kindly, is much more of an unknown. And believe me, Notre Dame fans are going to be in my comments. I'm expecting it telling me, hey, I'll take CJ Carr over Carson Beck because I see Beck throwing all these interceptions last year and Carr's got this golden arm. Bottom line, folks, is CJ Carr has not started a single collegiate game. He's only got, I think, a few snaps in mop-up duty. I don't think he's attempted a pass before in a collegiate game. So it's an unknown. And that's me putting it kindly to say it's an unknown. And will he be able to rise to the occasion, making his very first collegiate start in what's going to be a rowdy, hostile environment? And another thing that Notre Dame fans will claim is, well, guys, 70% of the stadium is going to be fighting Irish fans, that we're just going to take over. It's going to be like a home game. I think one of their safeties said it's going to be like a home game for us. Look, Notre Dame travels well, but I was at a game that they played in South Florida 8 years ago. Certainly did not feel like a Notre Dame home game. It felt very much like a Miami home game. In fact, that felt more like a Miami home game than any other game I've been to at Hard Rock Stadium. Probably even rivals the Orange Bowl days, the crowd that Miami had for that one. Another pick that I noticed this week coming in Miami's favor, Tom Fornelli from CBS Sports has joined some of his coworkers. A lot of CBS people are picking Miami. He's picking the Canes. I did notice, not surprised whatsoever, Joel Klatt from Fox Sports picked Notre Dame. Now, you talk about, I mentioned I thought Neuheisel had a grudge against Miami. Joel Klatt, who was knocked into another dimension by John Beeson about 21, 22 years ago, however long ago it was. That's a guy who's not going to say too many nice things about the Canes. Some historical context for this matchup. And again, the same way that, listen, I'm curious as to what the experts say about this game. Doesn't change my opinion on it. Like I've had my own scenarios formulated. If 100% of the analysts were picking Notre Dame, my pick would be the same. If 100% of them were picking Miami, my pick would be the same. But I am curious to hear what they have to say. So it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't change my opinion. And the historical context doesn't change my opinion either. Miami fans, we can take pride in this stat. Notre Dame, their last 6 visits to Miami to play against Miami. They did, win a game there last year against Penn State, but their last 6 visits to South Florida to play the Hurricanes have all ended in L's for them. 0-6 against the Hurricanes in their last 6 trips down here. Notre Dame hasn't won a game against Miami in Miami since 1977. But, That's not why I'm picking the Hurricanes to win. I'm picking Miami to win. I do think the crowd can help Miami today. The crowd from 1977 is not going to help us. The crowd from Sunday can help us in that matchup, but it is interesting. But now here's a historical stat that I do think can help Miami. We've talked about this a couple times this week. So this is going to be the 8th time in Carson Beck's career that he goes up against a top 10 opponent. He's done it 7 previous times, and he's got a 5-2 record against top 10 foes. So you talk about battle tested, right? I mean, it's not too many programs you can play at where in 2 seasons you play that amount of top 10 opponents. You haven't noticed Georgia's schedule the past couple of years has been a gauntlet, and there's nothing he hasn't seen before. So that's one historical stat because it specifically applies to a player who is on the roster right now playing the most important position this Sunday. That one does formulate my opinion a little bit. When we come back, and Carson Beck is going to play heavily into this one, I'll give you my players that absolutely need to step up for Miami to win this football game and some X factors who can provide a spark. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode. Hey, Locked On Canes fans, you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code FOOTBALL and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. And guys, I've been using Upside for the past 4 years. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime at your to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code FOOTBALL for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code FOOTBALL. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Folks, we're also brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and a dedicated support line make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and that dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Getting so pumped for Sunday night. Can't come soon enough, man. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first and second listen today. All right, so I'm a firm believer that when you're in a top 10 matchup, you got number 10 Miami against number 6 Notre Dame, and I believe Notre Dame's a good football team. I had a couple people in my comments from earlier today. I'm not mad about it. I would like to explain my position. Had a couple commenters that were on me because I was way too complimentary of Notre Dame. Like I was way too nice to Tyler Wojak, the host of Locked On Irish, and I was talking about how good Notre Dame is. Listen, I believe it's a damn good football team that Miami is facing on Sunday. Like if you're looking for a show, and I'm sure there's some Miami shows that do this, there's probably some Notre Dame shows that do this, because I find some of their content creators, not Tyler. Tyler is very level-headed and intelligent. Some of their content creators think this is going to be a pushover game, easy one for Notre Dame. Some Miami people seem to feel the same way. It's not what you get on this show. Like I'm not here to talk trash. I'm here to talk football. So I believe Notre Dame is a very worthy opponent. I also think Miami's going to win the game. So, I mean, if you feel like I was being too complimentary of the Irish, maybe I was. You're entitled to that opinion, but I stand by respecting an opponent, and I'm not the type of show that's going to be like, oh, yeah, those guys suck. Here's why Jeremiah Love is overrated. Here's why Here's why they're going to stink without Al Golden there coaching their defense. Like, that's not what you come to Locked On Canes for. I try to give you guys the facts and I give you my honest opinion on things. But I am of the opinion that in a game like this, your star players have to perform. That is non-negotiable. From the Notre Dame side, you might say, hey, Jeremiah Love, if he can run for 120, 130 yards, 150, that might be what it takes to beat Miami. I look at Miami, a team that does have players that are considered top 100 players, multiple of those in college football, players who were former high 4 and 5-star recruits. And I believe these are the cornerstone players that need to rise to the occasion. The first one, I don't think I have to explain too many reasons why, who has to rise to the occasion, is Carson Beck. Not only does Carson need to take care of the football, I believe Miami is going to have to hit some big passing plays to win this game, to keep Notre Dame's defense honest. And I say that for both sides. And you know what? When you got Carson Beck, 24-7 overall, 5-2 against top 10 teams in his career, versus CJ Carr, who is 0-0 in both of those categories, I think Miami has an edge there. And it's obvious Beck needs to step up. And I was watching what he said after practice this week, and it really mirrors everything I've learned about him since I got to interview him one-on-one back at ACC Media Days about a month and a half ago. I really think that the change of scenery and the new opportunity he has here has really reinvigorated his love for football. And I think he, sometimes you benefit from a change of scenery, and it's not just like the psychology of it. It's also, I think Shannon Dawson's offense is a perfect fit for Carson Beck, someone who's accurate, smart, experienced, because Dawson, I should say, gives his quarterbacks a lot of input and autonomy. The idea of Dawson's offense really being predicated on giving receivers an opportunity to create yards after catch and get in space. I think Carson Beck's quick release and his football IQ are really going to play into that. So I think the offense is perfect for him, and he's perfect for the offense. And so I really believe in that, but he's got to step up. I mean, if he has a bad game, Miami's probably not winning this football game unless both quarterbacks are really bad and it just comes down to other things. But Beck has got to step up. CECEMAUNOA, another star player, probably a first-round draft pick coming up next year. We talked about the belief that I have and some of the analysts have that Miami's going to be able to run the football, running down that right side with what CC and Inez Cooper provide is going to be crucial here. And, listen, I hope Miami can run left side, right side, everywhere. But CECEMAUNOA, this is the guy who's going to be playing on Sundays probably a year from now. He really has to step up, and I think he will. And I'll say the same thing about the left tackle, Markel Bell, protecting the blind side of his quarterback. And Bell, as Mario Cristobal said, probably the most improved player on the team since last year. He and CC on the two tackle spots are really going to set the tone. Ruben Bain, non-negotiable. This is a game where you have to wreak havoc. You have to command double teams. You've got to disrupt. You've got to make CJ Carr uncomfortable. And, obviously the work that Bain and Mesidor and anybody else on the edge, the work that they do against the running game is also going to be needed and appreciated. But this to me is a game where Ruben Bain, I believe he's had a phenomenal training camp, has got to step up, and he's got to be a disruptive force all game long. Wesley Besaint and Mo Toure at linebacker, those are the guys that I expect to be the two starters. A really, really important job for them going up against a duo or even trio of really talented, successful running backs. Non-negotiable. They've got to step up. One of the names mentioned by Josh Pate, who he thinks could be a player of the game guy from Miami, Mark Fletcher. I'll add Jordan Lyle. I mean, I think that the two of them are equally important. And listen, I'd like to see Marty Brown and Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, everybody, all the running backs get in and create big gains. But the two guys who have been here and done it in Miami uniforms, Fletcher and Lyle, and the way that they complement each other, I'm really going to put the spotlight on them, because Mark, to me, creating, and we talked to him earlier this week, and boy, is he fired up for this game, which I'm so happy about. But him bruising and wearing down that Notre Dame defense and being consistent, moving the chains, scoring touchdowns, picking up those tough yards. And then after he beats those guys up, Jordan Lyle, who's also strong, but he's got that extra gear and that breakaway speed, hopefully breaking off 30, 40-yard, 50-yard touchdowns, some chunk plays. I think Fletcher and Lyle are equally important in this one, so I put a big spotlight on them. Elijah Lofton, when we did our episode, our crossover with Locked On Irish this morning, I referred to Elijah Lofton as an X factor. I'll walk that back. I don't think he's an X factor. I think it's non-negotiable. Elijah Lofton has to have a good, consistent game. And that may not necessarily translate to like 110 yards on the stat sheet because he does so many of the little things as a blocker, sometimes a lead blocker, pass protection. I do think he is going to get some receptions and probably be a key guy to move the chains. But Elijah Lofton, to me, is such a well-rounded football player. Some of the positive reps that he has, we might not even realize it until we're kind of going over the film on Monday when we see some of the blocks he makes and some of the little things that he does out there. But he's got to have a good game. JoJo Trader. JoJo, it just came out with Miami's new roster coming out this week. He has officially been awarded the jersey number 1. He's got a standard to live up to. I know it's been long talked about, people wondering, is Trader banged up? What's going on? He's been back practicing and he's going to be healthy for this football game. And there is a chance that JoJo could be, Miami's overall best wide receiver this year, maybe the most consistent. I think he's really taken steps from his true freshman season last year. I think he's got to step up. And, I look at a couple guys on the back end. Notre Dame's got good receivers, Greathouse and Malachi Fields especially. This is going to be a big job for physical cornerbacks, Xavier Lucas and OJ Frederic. To me, they must, both of them, have a good game, be physical, lock down their receivers if Miami is going to make CJ Carr's life difficult and win this game. So, all right, some X factor players for me. I think Jacoby Thomas, safety transfer from Tennessee. And I want to send a shout out to our guy, Jason from Rock Boys Football, who joined us earlier this week. He brought up a hell of a point about Jacoby Thomas, who he's watched before in Tennessee. He is really valuable and physical in run support. That Jacoby Thomas is a guy who can get into that box and make a difference against Notre Dame's really, historically successful running game. So Jacoby Thomas can be an X factor in this game. On that defensive line, a guy that may not pop right into your head, but I think can play a role as an important depth piece. Armando Blunt, who's had a really good training camp. And Blunt is someone, I think he's going to do most of his damage on the edge, but he's also big enough to kick inside if necessary. I think that's a big one. Keelan Marion, another, I hope he does it as a receiver and a returner. But, when you talk about the opportunity to hopefully make some game-changing special teams types of plays, preseason All-American kick returner, Keelan Marion, this is a guy who can, hopefully score touchdowns for you on special teams, but, flip some fields and make a difference. Malachi Toney, true freshman receiver. I don't know for sure if he's going to start. He might start in the slot, but whether he starts or not, I think he's going to get on the field. He's been so good and so consistent throughout training camp. I want to see Mally make a difference. CJ Daniels, another receiver. I say I put his name in there as an X factor because he's had a good camp, but he's also the most experienced in that room. This is a 6-year senior, SEC experience. He's played in big games before. So he's someone who can really set the tone and set the mood along with a guy like Carson Beck for the rest of that offense. Cameron Bobby Pruitt at linebacker. He's physical. He's a lightning rod. He hits hard. Maybe force a fumble in there. If there's an X factor play made, it wouldn't surprise me if Bobby Pruitt is the reason that gets made. And another guy with SEC experience, Keontae Scott, probably going to be the starter at nickel. That's going to be a really, really important job. Scott's another one who I understand has had a really good training camp, and he's another senior. So these are some of the X factor guys on my list. All right, there are going to be some big-time recruits, including 2026 flip candidates that are going to be in attendance. We'll talk about that. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, there are tickets for this game, Miami Notre Dame, available on Game Time. I was looking at them earlier today, starting at under $200. You're not going to find deals like that anywhere else. College football is back. I couldn't be more excited. Tailgates, rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can sometimes feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Folks, I love getting the panoramic views from your seat in the app before you buy. Guys, Game Time is faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And so, all right, Friday, tomorrow, Friday or tomorrow, depending on what day you're watching this. It's Thursday right now. But on Friday, which might be today, if you're watching this on Friday, I'm going to be doing a live appearance and a live podcast. I'm really looking forward to this with new friend of the show, Michael Yo, who joined us a couple weeks ago. He organized this, and he's a professional comedian. So he got us the Fort Lauderdale Improv. So Michael Yo, me, Gio Milian are going to be live at the Fort Lauderdale Improv, 4:30 p.m. on Friday. And it's free. So you can come see us, watch us, and listen to us talk about the game, hang out with us. You do have to RSVP, though. So I'm going to put the link in the show description. And if you miss it, you feel free to just bug me on social media. I'll send it to you. Hit me up at Alex Donno on X, and we'll send you the link to RSVP. It's free, but you do have to RSVP if you want to be there. So check that out. There's going to be a lot of big time recruits at the game. Honestly, if you include 2026, it's a lot of Miami's verbal commits. I think almost the entire list, I think except for Jackson Cantwell, maybe. Everyone else is going to be there. The guys who are already committed. There's going to be a bunch of 2027 players there, a bunch of 2028s. So we'd be here all day if I was going to list everybody. I will say that tomorrow we're going to be joined by Brian Smith, the recruiting overlord. So we'll get scouting reports and talk about more of these guys. But some of the players who are going to be there, let's focus on the flip candidates class of 2026. Chaminade running back Derek Cooper, who's committed to Texas, will be at the game. You know, for what it's worth, Miami think they absolutely should do. Kept communication open with Cooper, to my understanding, and you know they're acting as if he's uncommitted. They're going to keep recruiting him till National Signing Day. So listen, I mean, I have no reason to believe that like a flip is imminent or anything like that. But you know, Miami is still recruiting Derek Cooper. He's going to be at the game. Defensive lineman Nolan Wilson out of Picayune, Mississippi. He's committed to Alabama. Miami's been recruiting Nolan for a long time. He's going to be at the game. Northwestern defensive lineman James Johnson, JJ, is committed to Texas. He's going to be at the game. He was actually originally committed to Georgia, flipped to Texas. You know, we're hoping he'll flip one more time to Miami. He's going to be at the game. IMG Academy running back Lakai Tompkins, who's committed to Louisville, will be there. Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, Nice High School linebacker Jacob Curry is going to be there. Actually, Curry would no longer be a flip, or I guess, you know, long-term flip, but he was committed to Northwestern, just decommitted, I think today, I think Thursday, either Wednesday or Thursday. Jacob Curry, linebacker Miami's recruiting, decommitted from Northwestern right in time for a Miami game day visit. So we'll see what happens there. Miami Northwestern safety to Darius Hughes, who's committed to Florida State. He'll be at the game. American Heritage linebacker Kaimani Morales, who's committed to Georgia Tech, is going to be at the game. So those are some of the flip candidates. I guess Jacob Curry no longer a direct flip candidate, but you know, guys who have been committed to other schools that Miami is looking at and will be hosting for this game. Speaking of flips, it's not what you guys want to hear, but five-star receiver class of 2026, top receiver in the class, Tristan Keys, finally flipped. I mean, it's been like the worst kept secret for the past 5 months that this dude was not going to stick at LSU. It's where he's been committed since March, but everyone's been talking about, oh, he's still being recruited by Miami. He's being recruited by Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Tennessee. He's of all. Tristan Keys just flipped to Tennessee today. If you connect the dots, Tristan Keys is an Adidas athlete. I know Miami is also an Adidas school, but Tennessee just got this new mega deal with Adidas. Hopefully Miami gets a new deal with them sometime soon because there's a huge NIL component to him. So, a lot of, I'm sure he'll tell you Tennessee's a great football fit as well. I don't doubt that, but it's also, from where I sit, a really good financial fit. So Tristan Keys has flipped to Tennessee. All right. So again, I said this earlier today. I'll reiterate my pick for Notre Dame at Miami on Sunday. I'm going Miami 23, Notre Dame 20. So I think it's going to be a relatively low scoring game. I think both teams are going to have some success running the football. People are sleeping on Miami's running game, though. I think Miami's going to have a lot more success than you think. I think Carson Beck being able to hit a few more big plays down the field than CJ Carr is going to be a big part of that. Beck, I trust him in this environment more than I would trust CJ Carr if I were on the Notre Dame side of it. So I'm going Miami 23, Notre Dame 20. We also have to hope. And you know what? I'm sure we're getting these in the comments already. If I talk about what we said earlier, players who must step up, I should have mentioned the kickers for Miami. So I'm mentioning it now. Whoever's kicking the field goals, probably Bert Auburn, maybe Carter Davis, whichever one of Miami's kickers are taking field goals, please do not miss. Miami fans are not used to kickers missing over the last 5 years, so you don't want to freak us out by missing a chip shot. Do not do that. Whoever is doing the kickoffs, probably Davis. I think he's got the longer leg. Place them wisely because Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are going to be back there returning kicks. So if you do us a favor, kick them out the back of the end zone. That'll save us a few headaches, please. So I could have very well mentioned the kickers for guys who need to step up. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow morning with the recruiting overlord, Brian Smith, right here on a new episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.